to me, there's two very easy no-doubters. Like Michael Bishop and Darren Sproles are on that Mount Rushmore, and there's nothing anybody can say. Bill Snyder, by the way, for sake of discussion, we're taking Bill Snyder out of it because if we did this truly, it would be Bill Snyder's face 4 times. So we're not going to do that because it's just not fair, and it's more fun and opens up more discussion if you do not have him on there. He can have his own monument separate that is not actually Mount Rushmore. Okay, so let's go. Michael Bishop, you know him, the GOAT, the highest Heisman finisher in school history, Davey O'Brien Award winner. He won the award for the best quarterback in the country, the best at his position in the country at the most important position that there is. And he won 22 games as a starter in 2 years. He took K-State to number 1, led K-State to 2 remarkable seasons in 1997 and 1998. I don't think there's any discussion there. Does anybody have anything to raise, and God help you if you do, against Michael Bishop being on the Mount Rushmore of K-State football?
No. Not right now.
Okay, good. Well, Darren Sproles is the other no-doubter here. Darren Sproles is the all-time rusher in school history. He set 23 school records while he was here. He had a tremendous NFL career, which is an element here that I think can help you. It's not required to be on the Mount Rushmore that you had a tremendous NFL career, but it can only boost your case. All right? So for Darren Sproles, that helps, being that he's a borderline NFL Hall of Famer and top 5 all-time in all-purpose yards in NFL history. That does matter. Also, he was a part of that Big 12 championship team at K-State. That's only happened twice since 1934 that K-State's won a league title, and he had arguably the best performance of his career in that game, where he rushed for over 230 yards, tacked on another 80-plus receiving yards and a touchdown. So he was at his best when the lights were the brightest, and K-State was at its best. Darren Sproles also no doubter here being on this list, right? No arguments. Mitch, he's your favorite player of all time. I assume you're not going to argue against Darren Sproles.
He's the best K-State player of all time. Of course Darren Sproles would be on the list. Okay. On the Mount Rushmore, chiseled in the mountain.
That's a fine opinion to have. I disagree with you, but there's a good argument there for it. So I won't get into the weeds on that discussion. But after those two, I think it's opened up to a lot of debate. Those two are very obvious, and now it's up to your personal preference here on what you want to argue. I think Jordy Nelson, to me, is number 3. Jordy, to me, belongs in there at number 3. And it's because not only what he did, which he was a Biletnikoff finalist. He did not win the award for best receiver in the country his senior year, but he was a finalist, and he was a consensus All-American. Ridiculous season, man. 1,600-plus receiving yards, 11 touchdowns. He has the record for most receiving yards in school history in a season. He has the school record for most receptions in a game and a season. He had a monster senior year catching passes from Josh Freeman. He's not the all-time leading receiver at K-State. In fact, he's not in the top 2 because it was really only his junior and senior year where he came on. But he's a guy that contributed a lot on special teams. He's a guy that had a great NFL career. And in this era, when the NFL was at its all-time peak in popularity and fantasy football era, and Jordy Nelson was out there as one of the elite wide receivers, that carries a lot of weight to me. And being a guy who contributed on special teams, that's very K-State. It's very emblematic of what K-State football is. And to top it all off, the cherry on top is he's a local kid that walked on. And that, like it or not, I kind of hate that that's become the narrative of K-State football throughout Snyder 2.0. It's been a big narrative surrounding K-State football that is a lot of times how K-State has won. So to me, Jordy has the best case out of that next group that's trying to fight to get their face etched on Mount Rushmore.
So I am going to not go with Jordy Nelson, even though love the guy. Tyler Lockett had 3 pretty strong seasons with K-State, and they were winning seasons every single time, going to bowl games, winning a Big 12 championship. He did get hurt his freshman year, something about playing in Stillwater, but Tyler Lockett came through every day. So did Jordy in his last year. I'm not including what was done in the NFL because Tyler's still playing. Jordy Nelson's career is over. I don't think it's fair to compare those quite yet until Tyler is done.
I would just say, Mitch, I think the argument for Jordy Nelson would be the NFL career for now. We'll see what happens with Tyler Lockett, but I think at their peak in college, they were both about equally as dominant. Tyler did it over a longer period of time, which is why he's the all-time leading receiver in K-State football history. They both were really good special teams contributors. They're pretty even in a lot of ways. Jordy, though, had a Packers Hall of Fame kind of career in the NFL. And I think he has a notoriety edge on Tyler Lockett. And so if we're talking about a Mount Rushmore and who people know your program by, I'm going to argue Jordy Nelson by nose, but Tyler Lockett's got a good case. My 4th spot is going to go to Colin Klein. I think Colin Klein being a quarterback earns him this spot over others like Terrence Newman and Mark Simoneau. All right, so Colin, a Heisman finalist. There have only been 2 in school history. Colin, quarterback, modern era, football at its peak of popularity. Okay, so to me, that's the distinction between the old heads that will say Lynn Dickey, Steve Grogan. Football, A, is better here at K-State now, and it's just more popular in the country. So Colin Klein's a more recognizable name and recognizable player. Colin Klein also won a conference championship, leading the team there. There's only been 2 of those since 1934. And he was such a unique player, the way he played, the style that he played with, just being the battering ram of a quarterback, that is something that made him more memorable to a national audience. And he is, I think another easy way to really put this into perspective is, much like Michael Bishop, he is that guy for a whole generation of K-State fans. Like Michael Bishop was that dude from my generation of K-State fans. Colin Klein was that dude for a generation younger, like you, Mason, of K-State fans. That's going to get him a spot on Mount Rushmore for me. Now, the other guy, I would argue, I think Mark Simoneau deserves more consideration than most fans would give him here. And Terrence Newman is another name that I've seen thrown about quite a bit. I would go Mark Simoneau as my 5th here. So he's a College Football Hall of Famer, which only 2 Wildcats that are players can ever say. The other is Gary Spaney. Mark Simoneau, a 4-year starter from 96 to 99. I mean, you come in and you start from 96 to 99. The team won 11 games, 3 of those 4 years. Like, that is as good a stretch of K-State football as has ever been played. And you started for 4 years. Consensus All-American by the time he was done. He was Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. He was the runner-up for the Butkus Award as the best linebacker in the country. And he tacks on to that K-State story. He's a Kansas boy from Smith Center. Like, Mark Simoneau was so quiet, like he wasn't a boisterous personality, and there were so many good players when he was playing at K-State football at that time. It feels like he gets overshadowed, but Mark Simoneau was freaking excellent. Excellent. And so to me, he's my 5th on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I think Mark Simoneau probably deserves to be in the conversation. The toughest part about this, though, is that offense is really where you make your money and where the guys that are the faces of teams typically are. And I just think that, playing defense isn't sexy enough to make it to the Mount Rushmore. You have to be a guy that was always on the offensive.
Fair point. And Mark Simoneau is a linebacker that played when football was a lot different. Like, the game in general was just played so differently. But even then, like, Mark Simoneau had a 10-year NFL career. I mean, it's not like the game passed him by immediately after that. The guy played for a decade in the league, which is another thing. Like, nobody ever thinks of Mark Simoneau being in the NFL, but he lasted a long time in the NFL, too. Definitely didn't have the marquee career that Darren Sproles or Jordy Nelson did in the NFL. But Mark Simoneau, the NFL career of his should play a factor in this as well.